This is Laura DeFranco, holistic physical therapist and owner of Brave Healer Productions. I'm excited to bring you my new holistic healing series where you're going to learn from the experts what it means to live fiercely alive, mind, body, and soul. I invite you now to take a breath, relax, and feel the vibe of the words my guest has to share with you today. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today. So you guys know the mission around here at Brave Healer Productions is to change the world one brave word at a time, right? So here to help me do that today is Frank Biskov. Frank, did I get your last name right?
Close enough.
Okay, you can correct me if you need to. You guys, Frank is on a mission to help his clients create and maintain control of their financial lives. It is done through conversations about the goals and what really matters to each person, in-depth planning, and using sustainable investing to create an emotional bond between the values and money of each person. You guys are going to be linked up in the show notes at 44financial.com. I'm happy to have you here today, Frank. The stress right now for a lot of topics is high, but this one in particular. And I know that there are lots of things on people's minds more than any other time, maybe in our lifetime right now, as it relates to finances. So first of all, taking control of this, I know you get this and you say this and you teach this, but taking control of your finances right now will greatly reduce your stress. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, no, I think we're current times is like obviously nothing like we've ever experienced. There's so many stressors. Money stress is one of those where you have a level of say. So it can be part of your control and then remove the stress. But it is not everyone wants to deal with it or comfortable going there. But I think it's a relatively easy process to get there. Executing it may be hard, but like it's like going on a road trip. So know where you are, know where you're going, and figure out how to get there. And once you have that planned out, instead of just driving nilly-willy along the road, turning right at one light, left at the next, actually having a plan reduces the stress. Some like the adventure, and that's great for them. But most, especially when it comes to finances, they do like the step-by-step description or using Waze or Google Maps or whatever they're using for their trips.
Well, so how did you get to doing what you do today? Tell me a little bit about your story.
Well, I've always loved money or the idea of using money to reach a certain goal. I just didn't know I wanted to be a financial advisor until I became one. Almost. My trajectory was a little all around, but always within finance. But when I finally got in a role where I was advising people and helping them investing and reaching the next level on their fulfillment ladder, I knew that's where I belonged. And then once I had built enough experience, when I hadn't started out on my own, to be able to do it my way, which is a little different than most. But hey, I get to do things my way, and I like it, and helping people is such a great feeling.
Definitely. Did you say fulfillment ladder? I love that.
Yeah, no, it's if you look at it from a working with a financial advisor, like money management is the foundation. It has to be there, it has to work. And the next one is like reaching the goals, like basic goals, like, okay, can I pay for college? Can I get a new car? Can I like set up for retirement? On top of that, it becomes a little bit more like including your personal values. And the top ladder is fulfillment. at the top rung of the ladder is fulfillment, where like everything just works out and you can live your purpose fully. And depending where you are in your life, like, your priorities may be different, but working up that ladder towards reaching fulfillment through, and finance is a huge part of that. The number one question I get from clients is, can I retire early? And that's the fulfillment part. They may not end up retiring early, but having the power to make the decision is, again, a huge burden off their shoulders. But if you like doing what you're doing, you keep doing it. But it becomes an option, not a chore.
Yes, that's so
huge
important.
Difference there.
That is a huge, huge difference. Well, listen, earlier, a minute ago, you said that it is actually hard for people to go there. It's hard for people to talk about this. Why do you think this topic is so hard to talk about when it's so important to our basic fulfillment in life?
A lot of it is that's a taboo around money. And people, it's such a huge part of our lives. And if you don't feel comfortable talking about it, it becomes a negative story. You don't see a whole lot of people going out and like saying, well, it's striking a fine balance between bragging and like telling a good story. So someone, like if you're at a dinner party and someone's talking about their investments, they never mention the losers. They only talk about the winners. But the whole story is like, is everything. And people might find it to be mundane or don't want to bother others with their issues, but it's such a huge part. And I've found the earlier you face a tough situation, the easier and cheaper it is to solve. It's like with your car. You start hearing that rattle, you ignore it for a while. It could just be a little gasket that needed tightening. It will cost you $50. I know you're into cars. I'm not, so this may be completely off. But if you ignore that rattle for long enough, it becomes like a major, very expensive issue.
Yes.
So finances is the same thing, and that goes back to that the road trip. Like the unknown is scary for most people. So knowing where you are, knowing if you have an issue, you can start solving it. If you don't know, if you just think maybe you have an issue, but you don't know what it is, it's just stress. And you can't really solve something you don't know. So if once you realize, okay, I have an issue or an obstacle or something I want to attain, you can solve for it. Maybe it's retirement and it's like 30 years away, but you don't think you're where you want to be. Great, let's get it started. The sooner you start, the cheaper and easier it is to solve for.
So you kind of answered the next question that I had a little bit, but I'm totally guilty of hiding my head in the sand about financial issues. Maybe in the past, I'm much better at it now, but in the past, the fear has taken over. And I'm left with like various forms of avoidance, if you want to call it that. But you say knowledge is power. And you help people understand the issues so that they can work toward that solution. So tell me a little bit more about how you do that.
Well, the biggest step is the discovery process. Is to like build out like as part of a conversation, like figure out like, okay, what do you have going for you? Like what money do you have? What money do you make? And then where do you see yourself going? What goals do you have? Do you want to travel, new car, retirement, kids, college, whatever it may be? And then like just like basic information. And then see, okay, what matters most? If you have to rank these, let's have a conversation as to what do you need to get to, where would you like to go, and so forth. And it's amazing having that discussion, and with no like big agenda. It's just a conversation. You can see like people kind of sitting up a little taller. It's an awesome experience because all of a sudden it's just like having someone to talk to. about a topic they don't feel comfortable with in a non-threatening environment is a huge relief for a lot of people. And then once you get into it and we start like chipping away at like the corners and go into a little more detail, all of a sudden the issues, usually they end up being smaller than they felt before. And that's the part of the job I love working with, is creating that clarity and having a trajectory towards the next level. That's the fun part.
I mean, I can't say enough about just what you said about being able to talk to somebody about it, and growing up in a family where the talk was absent on that topic, and probably other topics too. And you just, you kind of grow up learning that you don't talk about money, or that if you do, you mentioned it earlier, either you're bragging or something else, I don't know what, but it's so deep seated, right? And so when people come along to you and they're able to have a really healthy conversation about it, possibly for the first time in almost their whole lives, I think that's a game changer,
Yeah, no, and it's a lot of fun too, because it's a process. It's not like something you solve in one session, 1 week. Sometimes it takes years before like you're fully on board, you have everything set up, but then all of a sudden you can focus on what matters to you. And day-to-day finances is not one for most people. It just has to work. They don't want to deal with it, but getting that set up is huge. And then like I have a long checklist I'm building as part of the conversation. And yeah, at some point we look at like estate documents or refinancing and so forth, but at due time. And a lot of that stuff I don't do myself. I don't do insurance. I know people that are great at it. I know great estate attorneys. I know great like CPAs. And I get you set up with the right people if you need those at your stage in life. And I think that's also part of the conversation, to get someone, instead of going to Yellow Pages if they still exist, and like just finding someone or going on Yelp, having someone that already has been vetted and work, it's one less hurdle. And then like we're building a team around you. So that's the kind of the ultimate. And some of that stuff takes years. You may not need a CPA now. Maybe you do in 5 years. Maybe you change jobs and start a company, whatever. We'll deal with that along the way. But getting started is the hardest part, but the most important.
Yes, definitely. So the thing that I think makes you stand out in this world is you help people align with their investments with their personal values. When I first started hearing you talk about this, I thought, oh, well, nobody's really asked me that before, and it's part of, I know who you are and what you do. And so talk to me a little bit more about how we can bring these two things together. I think that when you're in survival mode, it's very hard to link your money to your values. You're just trying to survive, right? So, but you're here to empower us with this. So tell me more about that.
Well, if you're, obviously, we have to put out the fire first. But once the fire, maybe it's reduced to embers at this point. And we start working towards your bigger goals, which could be more long-term. Maybe you had like a 401k scattered with former employers, and get all that structured and aligned. Then we start looking at, okay, how should this be invested? And I think my experience is if people invest in a way they feel good about, it's easier to stick to the plan. How many feel good about their 401k? Like it's not something that comes up at a dinner party, because why would you? If you have your investments aligned in a way that you feel good about, it could be looking at like equality issues or environmental issues. That's when it's how you live on a day-to-day basis, and having your money invested in that way to further the message makes it easier to stick to the plan in a year like we've had this year. It's like, because there's a bigger purpose behind it. You're invested in companies that are at least not making the situation worse, hopefully making it better. And environmental change, like carbon footprint, is that kind of weird thing, hard to quantify, but investing in a way where you are working towards leaving this place at least not worse than when we came, hopefully a little bit better for the next generation. That brings that's part of the fulfillment ladder we talked about before.
Definitely.
Is to align your personal views with your money. And you may not feel like one person, you can make a big difference. But you and your closest 100 or 1,000 friends doing this, all of a sudden it creates enough of a difference where it starts to matter. A lot of like the retirement plans are starting to get this, but they're so far behind. So you might need to nudge them a little bit. But starting with your personal finances, it's easy to do, and you don't have to give up return in the process. You can do both.
I think if people really get this one idea, that they'll actually turn from being fearful to talk about this to really excited to talk about it. Because when those things are aligned, there's a super badass energy there. It just gets you excited about having the conversations so that you can find that way forward towards something you really believe in, towards something that really matters to you. So it stops just being, ugh, my finances, and it turns into the legacy you leave, and I think that is really, really exciting. Is there anything else you want to say about that?
I totally agree. I'm kind of, as you mentioned before, like do the dinner party test. Is this something you'd want to talk about? And personally, I think so, but I'm a little jaded. But like feeling good about like how you are aligned, and a big part of what I do is also talking to clients about charitable giving. It's part of the fulfillment ladder. Money itself has no value until you spend it or give it away. Just having $100 is not going to do anything for you until you go spend it or give it to someone who really needs that $100. So I think charitable giving is a huge part of most people's want-to-do list. Maybe they haven't gotten around to it, and like again, working with people that are doing this on a day-to-day basis allow you to take advantage of, like, say, tax codes to get the most out of what you end up giving. So that's an ongoing discussion with clients. Some start their own charities or foundations or whatever you call it, and it can be done for very little money and very little headache, but gives you a control and a sense of purpose. And it allows you to have the conversation with the next generation that you were mentioning was an absent topic. If you have like a family council and say, okay, we have this amount of money in our foundation, we want to donate towards charities. Let's talk about which ones and why and so forth. And it's a way to teach the next generation about, say, compound interest. So like, okay, we put 10,000 in the foundation. It generated 2,000 this year. Great year. So what are we doing with this 2,000? Do you want to keep it invested to grow it further so we can give more next year? Do you want to give it to someone now? What do you want to do? And just having the discussion, it's a pretty safe environment to talk about money, because it's not your own spending money. You have to give it away. But structuring and having that conversation and teaching the value of money. I have a young kid, and the goal is we'll have a family council and say, okay, you want to give this to whatever it is, like a local charity. well, write out a check and bring it down in person and maybe volunteer at a soup kitchen or something at the same time to like give the full like experience what both money and time volunteering can do.
I love that so much. Those are great dinner table conversations to get your kids on board with, first of all, just being really comfortable having the conversations, but then getting them out of that mindset of, ooh, money means I get to go buy whatever this is for myself. It just turns it to something different. And
Right.
there's a gratitude and generosity feel here for me too. And so this kind of gets into something else that you talk about, which is you talk about creating a positive spiral of self-fulfilling actions around your money, your words there. And I loved that line so much. So how else can I get that spiral going, Frank? I want the spiral.
Well, it's like taking small steps in the right direction. Like do figure out like what matters to you, and see what resources you have. Some have a lot of financial resources, some have a lot of time, and like putting those like together to work as one creates a lot of fulfillment. One thing I'd like to offer your listeners, if anyone is interested, is like let's look at how are you invested compared to what matters to you. It's thankfully there's a lot of great tools out there I have access to that allows me to do this sort of analysis. But it is quite interesting how the outcome. It's a great conversation starter. And then like a couple of easy steps as to how you can start making that difference. It's something I believe in at the core, in my core is so key to make that little bit of a step. And even if you end up not working with me, if you get on board on this train, the more people are on the train, the more powerful it becomes. And we can make a difference because companies listen to their stakeholders, both customers and shareholders and the like. And if the more people voice their opinion, and part of it is money talks, the bigger impact can we have. So that's part of like just taking that first step. Figure out where you are, where you want to go. It can be just reviewing your boring retirement account. Let's just review it and make it something that reflects who you are.
Yeah, I really love this piece a lot. It's since knowing you, it's gotten me to think a little bit about that. And then I do need somebody to help me do, I don't know that we even know where some of those accounts are going and if they're going to places that really support, the values and align with that. So yeah, you have me thinking a lot about this. And I also love that you said small steps because it can feel overwhelming. But if you just do one little thing at a time, then it's not so overwhelming anymore.
And knowing which step to take, it can
right.
be daunting. Like one big step most of us had to take at one point is Social Security. It's overwhelming. There's so many different decisions going into, should I delay? Should I do it now? What should I do? And you get one shot at making that decision. And you have to do it once in your life. Are you going to make a good decision? Maybe, maybe not. But working with someone who's been through that process before helps remove some of that, the burden of the decision. And that's just one example. There are a ton of those throughout life where as your life circumstances change, there's some decisions you have to make, and just knowing what the options are down to like a pretty basic level makes the decision relatively easy. And if you take a lot of small good decisions, it becomes like a big positive experience.
So if you love what Frank is talking about, you guys have a conversation. I've hooked you up in the show notes with Frank at 44financial.com, and part of his job is to have that conversation with you to help you understand what the possibilities are. So that is going to be maybe a conversation that changes your life, you know? So Frank, I've made it a habit now to not let fear run the show in my life. But right now, the day, the year that you and I are speaking together, right now is very hard. We're in the middle of COVID, and we had our anxieties before that started, and we have, you know, the aftermath and the trauma of a year now almost. And the advice right now is flying at us from all kinds of scary and different angles. And it's very, very difficult to discern. The time is also unprecedented. So how do we take good advice right now from our support people, especially financial people? How do we know what the right move is when it seems like everything right now is in pure chaos?
Well, you have to find something that resonates with you. There is not one solution that fits everyone. One of my big things is to make sure your partners their interests are aligned with yours. Know how they get paid. That's a huge thing. Like, make sure you're working with fiduciaries that are looking out for your best interest. That's a huge difference maker. So know they are looking out for your best interest, and take the time. If someone comes at you with a paper and a pen, that may not be the right thing to sign right away. It has to resonate with you. And if you have questions and you don't feel you can get the answers, you need to go somewhere else. You have to be on board with it. It's your life. You have to be in charge of it. It may be tough decisions, but only work with people that you're comfortable with and that can explain what it is you're doing. That will help you grow as a person and help you make better decisions long term. So I can't stress that one enough. Like work with nice people.
That's good advice. Definitely. Thank you so much. Thank you for what you're doing in the world and for being here today to share it with us. But is there any last message you want to leave our viewers with today?
Take that first step. Like, even if you're scared the road can't carry you, just take a small step in the right direction. If you think there's a big issue looming, figure out what it is and start solving it one step at a time. Break it down into small, manageable pieces, and anything can be conquered.
And you don't have to do it alone, you guys, obviously, because we have Frank on our side to help guide the way. Thanks again, Frank.
Thank you so much for having me.
You guys, I love to end with one of my favorite questions ever, because if you can slide into a curiosity, everything opens up, right? So the question I'm going to leave you with today is, what if there's something you haven't learned yet that could change everything about your finances, right? I have a feeling that Frank is going to be able to help you with what that something is. So thank you guys for tuning in, and please drop down into those show notes. Take the next step with Frank, explore, have a conversation. Anything you guys want to know about books and writing, you can find me and Brave Healer Productions at bravehealer.com. Thanks, everybody. See you next time. Love what you heard today. Don't forget to drop down and hit that subscribe button, you guys, and then join me over at bravehealer.com for just a little bit more healing badassery. Have a great one.